Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about a couple of terms that are going to be really important for us as we continue discussing as we move through American literature. Something you're going to hear me talk about a lot is literary era. And a literary era is a time period that's going to stretch across a few years. We usually start measuring them when we see a certain pattern happen in literature. So, literary era will usually surround some historical events, and so a lot of people are talking about the same thing during that historical event. Okay, so in our first example, we're going to talk about the literary era of colonialism. Now, why colonialism? Well, America, we started off as a colony. And so during the earlier days of while we were still not a country yet of our own, while we were still a British colony, there's a whole bunch of literature that talks about the experience of being in that colony. It's going to be very different than our literature afterwards when we were now experiencing the world as a country of its own. Okay? So our first era is going to be colonialism. I'll give you this is not the beginning of American literature, because American literature is actually a phrase that is more complicated than that. Most of the time, when people think of the beginning of American literature, they think of, when the Pilgrims came. They think that's when American literature starts, when in reality, there's like a whole history of things that happened before that on this land. We've already read some. When you guys read the Iroquois creation narrative, that is still literature. And it happened before the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock. Okay, so colonialism, though, that's the actual beginning of what we're talking here. Not the beginning of American literature. The beginning of colonialism started in the 1620s because the Pilgrims, that's when they landed. Can you think of when colonialism ends? For the sharper group, colonialism ends when we stop becoming a colony. And if you guys know your history, that's the 4th of July, 1776. So our first era of American literature is going to be colonialism. Within that era, there are sub-movements of literature, okay? The first sub-movement of literature is going to be Puritanism, okay? Or Puritan literature. Now, the Puritan movement is going to cover essentially when the Pilgrims came to right up until the American Revolution started to boil, okay? Or just before it began to boil. So like 1740s, 1750s. So we go from the 1620s to like the 1740s and 50s. That's when we have our Puritan movement. Now, if you know what a Puritan is, great. Then you're going to know a couple of the ideas, a couple of the themes and motifs that happen commonly in Puritan literature. If you think of a Puritan and you think of a Pilgrim, what's the first few things you think of? Well, let's start by, I'm just going to give them to you. Their religious experience is important. These are people who left England and went to a whole new world specifically so that they could worship God. So religion is going to make a big theme. If you remember, a theme is a wide universal idea that's presented in literature, and we see religion as a part of many pieces of literature. Then we're also going to have difficulty, hardship, as a part of Puritan literature, and rightly so. These guys lived a hard life. Imagine you leave planet Earth and you go to another planet that has not been, that has not had a modern culture. There's a more primitive culture there. And even saying that, we got to be careful how we describe other peoples and other civilizations. But you're talking about going from the buildings of London with like streets and maps and libraries and city halls and government buildings to North America where there are no buildings. Okay, so hardships are going to be one. So we have religious thought, religious experience. We have hardships, okay? And then we have a theme called providence. God provides, okay? So we move from hardship, where, man, life is so difficult. A lot of the literature focuses on how difficult life is, and then we move to providence. God will provide through that difficult situation. And so we're going to see that again and again and again in Puritan literature. Okay, moving on to motifs. Now remember, motif is a little bit more specific. Motifs are things we're going to see in a lot of the literature that are mentioned explicitly. We're going to see prayers mentioned a lot, okay? And if you think about it, that kind of goes with our themes, difficulty and God's providence. So we see prayers happening a lot. We see sermons happening a lot. And then we see lamentation happening a lot. People will be sorry and sad, be upset about what they're going through, okay? These are just a few. There might be more. I'm going to have a printout for you of all of the themes and motifs, and we'll discuss more in class. But these are just some of the ones that we can expect in Puritan literature. We're going to discuss the Enlightenment, which is the second part of colonialism, but we'll discuss that in another video, or we'll discuss that in class together. Now, one more term I want to discuss with you guys. This is the term of genre, okay? Today, if you go to Barnes & Noble and the word genre means like, what type of book am I reading? Am I reading like a romance novel? Am I reading a mystery novel? Am I reading fiction, nonfiction? Am I reading a self-help book? These are all different genre that we mentioned today, but that's not what genre used to mean a long time ago. And in a literature class, when we discuss the word genre, what we mean is the format of literature. Okay, so these could be a bunch of different things, but some of the standard ones that you're going to see a lot. Novel, that's like a book. A short story, poetry, and these are just a few of them. For Puritan literature, you're going to see a lot of journals and diaries, because, this is what people wrote at the time. They had pen and paper, and that was it. So they would write down their experiences. There's a lot of journals and diaries about what happened in those early days. There's also going to be not news articles, but people are going to just chronicle their journey into the new world. And so these are the different genres that we talk about. So when in class, when I ask you, what is the genre of literature, I'm not asking you to tell me like comedy or romance. I'm asking you to tell me what was the format of literature that they were talking about. Okay, thank you so much. If you guys have any questions, remember to email me. All right, talk to you later.